Hey mates, I'm Toby. I used to live in a crazy, busy city, but all the noise and people were stressing me out. I needed a quiet escape, so I found a remote lighthouse online to rent for a night. The idea of being alone in the vast ocean sounded super peaceful. The lighthouse stood strong against the stormy sea, promising a night of peace. The rain kept a steady beat against the silence, and the occasional thunder added some excitement to my adventure. Stepping into the lighthouse and leaving the city chaos behind, I felt both excited and a little nervous. Little did I know that this rainy night would be one I'd never forget. When I got there, the rain was coming down hard, making everything look a bit gloomy. The lighthouse was even more remote and old-fashioned than I imagined. It stood tall and strong, like a beacon in the storm. Inside, I found a secret room filled with old letters and pictures. It felt like stepping back in time. The letters were from a family who used to live there, telling stories about their happy times, sad times, and even their secrets. The pictures were old and faded, but you could still see the people's faces. They looked serious, like they were hiding something. I felt a little bad for snooping, but I couldn't help but wonder about the lighthouse's past and the people who had lived there before. Things started getting weird soon after. I heard noises that weren't the rain or wind, and I kept catching shadows out of the corner of my eye. A shiver ran down my back. I felt like someone was watching me, like I wasn't alone anymore. The lighthouse, which was supposed to be a peaceful getaway, suddenly felt crowded and creepy. But then, among the old letters, I found a strange map. It looked like a treasure map, hinting at hidden riches somewhere in the lighthouse. Finding treasure was exciting, but it also made me even more scared. Was I really the only one after this treasure, or did someone else share this lighthouse with me? Clutching the map, I decided to dig into the history of the lighthouse. I discovered a family that used to live here ages ago, the Walters. It turns out they were famous for being jerks. They'd scare people and steal their money. The more I read about them, the more I felt like they were still around. It felt like the wind whispered their voices, and the creaky lighthouse seemed to echo their laughter. I decided to find the treasure, not because I wanted to be rich, but to uncover the truth about the Walters. As I followed the map's clues, each step led me deeper into the mystery of the lighthouse and the spooky family who used to live there. Following the map, I finally found the hidden treasure. But as I reached for it, I realized it was a trick by the Walter family to get me. The floor beneath me crumbled, and I plunged into a dark, hidden basement. It was damp and smelly, like something had rotted down there. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows. The creepy descendants of the Walter family, carrying on their rotten family business. They grinned wickedly and said, "Welcome to the family," their voices bouncing off the walls of the small space. I was trapped, but I wasn't giving up. Using all my smarts and bravery, I managed to escape their trap and face the Walter family head on. We chased each other through the narrow lighthouse hallways, the storm outside mirroring the chaos inside. In the end, I outsmarted them. I used their own traps and tricks against them, turning the tables completely. As I burst out of the lighthouse, the rain washed away all the fear and excitement, leaving just pure relief and a feeling of accomplishment. I walked away from the lighthouse with a story I'd never forget. Driving away, I glanced back in the rearview mirror. The lighthouse stood tall, its light cutting through the storm, a reminder of my adventure and how I outsmarted those creeps. As I drove away, a creepy feeling wouldn't leave me alone. In the rearview mirror, I saw a figure standing by the lighthouse, watching me disappear. It was just a dark shape, blurry in the storm, but it was definitely there. The figure didn't move, it just kept staring after me. I felt a coldness shoot down my back. Was it one of the Walter creeps, or something way worse? I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't want to find out. I slammed my foot on the gas and drove as fast as I could, leaving the lighthouse and its mysteries far behind. But the image of that figure stuck in my mind, a spooky reminder of the crazy night I just had. The lighthouse, which was supposed to be peaceful and relaxing, had become a symbol of secrets and scars. Even though I got away, that night would stay with me forever. A story that would send shivers down my spine whenever I thought about it. Hey, my name's Martin and I write stories for a living. But deep down, I love to explore new places. The city's exciting with all its hustle and bustle, but it can get tiring too. All that noise and crowd drown out my ideas for stories. So I decided to take a break and find a quiet place to relax and think. I found the perfect spot, a farmhouse in the countryside far from the city mess. Around it, there were only open fields and thick forests. It was so peaceful, the only sounds you could hear were leaves rustling, birds singing, and maybe even your own thoughts. The farmhouse was old, but it had a cozy feel, like something from a storybook. It was just what a writer like me needed. I could already picture myself sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, writing stories while looking at all that green space. Guess what? It was also storm season. Perfect timing, right? There's something special about storms that helps me write even better. They create a whole mood, you know? As I packed my bags and headed for the farmhouse, I was super excited. But what I didn't know was that this old farmhouse had its own secrets waiting to be discovered. My quiet getaway was about to turn into an adventure full of chills and mysteries. I finally settled in at the farmhouse, but outside a crazy storm was brewing. Rain pounded on the roof like a million tiny drums, and the thunder boomed so loud it felt like the whole house was shaking. I was just starting to relax when suddenly a loud knock rattled the door. It was like a punch through all the storm noise. I froze, my heart jumping into my throat. Who could be visiting this late, out in the middle of nowhere? Slowly, I crept towards the door, my footsteps thumping loudly in the quiet house. I swung the door open, and a blast of wind whooshed in, carrying the cold, wet smell of the storm. In the dim light, I saw a figure standing there, a man in a black coat. His face was hidden under a big hood, so he looked like a dark shadow against the storm outside. Before I could even say hello, the man vanished. Unbelievable. He was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I stood there glued to the spot, staring out at the stormy night. It felt like the man was still there, even though he wasn't. The rest of the night was a crazy mess. The storm kept roaring, and the man in the black coat replayed in my head like a ghost. Finally, the rain pattering on the window lulled me to sleep. The crazy events of the night faded away, becoming a strange dream in the back of my mind. The second night, the storm was even crazier. Rain poured down like a never-ending bucket shower, each drop's a lonely reminder that I was all alone. The thunder sounded like angry giants stomping on the roof, and the lightning flashes were like strobe lights in my living room. Just as I was getting ready for bed, again, another knock echoed through the house. My heart did a flip-flop. It was him again, the creepy guy in the black coat. Through the foggy glass on the door, I could see his dark shape like a shadow puppet show against the storm. This time, I wasn't going to let him disappear. I flung the door open, ready to yell a bunch of questions at him, but guess what? Just like before, he vanished into the storm faster than a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. I stood there, soaked by the wind whipping in, staring into the black night. Fear and curiosity were like a tug-of-war inside me. Finally, curiosity won. I grabbed my jacket and ran out into the storm, squinting to see where the guy went. But it was like someone turned off the lights. The night was as dark as a bat's cave, and the rain made it impossible to see more than a couple of feet ahead. Just as I was about to give up and head back inside, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the storm's noise. It was a woman's scream filled with so much terror that it made my hair stand on end. It sounded like it came from deep inside the woods, a desperate cry for help swallowed by the storm. The scream scared me so bad that I forgot all about chasing the guy. My brain was racing 1,000,000 miles a minute and my heart felt like a drum solo in my chest. I spun around and bolted back for the farmhouse, the woman's scream echoing behind me like a bad song stuck on repeat. The black man was the least of my worries. I slammed the farmhouse door shut behind me, breathing so hard I could barely gasp for air. Being inside didn't make me feel much better, though. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely grab my stuff. I knew I had to get out of there, like yesterday. As I drove away, the storm seemed to get even madder, like it was throwing a tantrum because I was leaving, but I didn't care. The farmhouse, the creepy guy, the woman's scream, they were all in the rearview mirror now. All I could focus on was the road ahead, leading me back to the familiar chaos of the city, which suddenly felt pretty good. Even though I was safe at home now, back in the city noise, my mind kept going back to the farmhouse. The man in black, the scream, so many questions. Who was he? Why was he there? And the woman, who was she? Was she okay? Was she even real? Finally, I was home, safe. But the quiet of the farmhouse, the loneliness, the fear, they all stayed with me like a creepy souvenir from a weekend gone horribly wrong. I knew I'd never forget the farmhouse, the man in black, or the woman's scream. They were etched in my mind, chilling reminders that scary things can happen even in the quietest places. Hello, my name is Taurus. It was one of those nights when the rain was going wild like a big watering can had tipped over. My wipers were working super hard to clear the storm, and the city lights were all hazy streaks through the sheets of rain. The streets were nearly empty, like something out of a scary movie. While I was driving through this crazy rain, I saw someone all alone on the side of the road. It was a girl, totally soaked from head to toe, with her clothes sticking to her like shrink wrap. She was waving her arms like crazy, trying to get anyone to stop their car. There was something about how scared and helpless she looked that made me feel really bad. So, I pulled over my car and offered her a ride. When she got in, I could see her whole body shaking, and her teeth were chattering because she was so cold. We tried to say hello, but she spoke a language I didn't understand at all, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It sounded weird, but kind of pretty, too. Even though we couldn't understand each other's words, I could see how thankful she was in her eyes. It made me know for sure I did the right thing by helping her. Even though we couldn't speak the same language, we kind of worked things out. After a few tries, she blurted out, "Metro station in English!" That shocked me since it was way far away, especially in this bad weather, but everyone has their own reasons, right? I didn't ask any questions. I just turned the car around and went towards the city center. The rain was like a drum solo on the roof, making the ride quiet and strange. It took a long time and the rain made it hard to see, but I just kept going. I wanted to help her get where she needed to be. And the gas light came on in my car, so I pulled over at a gas stop along the way. It was creepy quiet there, except for the rain beating on the roof. I bundled up in my jacket and stepped outside, calling out for someone to help me with the gas pump, but nobody came. The whole place seemed abandoned, with the lights flashing weirdly in the little office. I chose to fill up the car myself so I could get back on the road quickly. When I got back to the car, guess what? The girl was gone. The passenger seat was empty. I searched everywhere, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Maybe she got anxious and found another ride, or maybe she just really needed to get to that metro stop fast. I don't know. I shrugged and got back in the car to finish driving home, still a little confused about what just happened. Even though the rain wouldn't stop, I kept going. It sounded like 1,000,000 tiny raindrops were beating on my car. The road was nearly empty except for a car here and there. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone who looked familiar on the side of the road. It was actually the same girl standing in the exact same spot where I picked her up before. I couldn't believe it. I slowed down the car but didn't stop, my mind running 1,000,000 miles a minute with confusion and fear. As I drove past her, I took a quick peek in the rearview mirror. There she was, all alone in the rain with car lights shining behind her. And then I saw something that freaked me out totally. She was laughing. She laughed. Not just a little giggle, but a full-throated, raucous laugh, as if she found the entire situation to be funny. It made me feel like I was about to freeze, and it sent shivers down my spine. I slammed on the gas and drove away as fast as I could, not even daring to look back. Finally, I pulled into my driveway, my heart still thumping like a drum from that weird experience. My house looked amazing, all warm and lit up even though it was raining cats and dogs outside. As I parked and got out of the car, I just couldn't shake this feeling of creepiness. The picture of the girl laughing in the rain kept popping into my head. I nearly ran inside and locked the door behind me, but even being home didn't calm me down much. I kept looking out the windows, half expecting to see her face staring back at me from the darkness. The rain kept drumming on the roof, making the whole house seem even quieter. I tried to figure out what just happened, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Who was that girl? Why was she there? Why did she leave and then just show up again in the same spot? The questions were spinning around in my head like a storm, and there were no answers in sight, just like the girl herself.